You were meant to be tested in this world. And you were meant to bear witness to the tests of others. It's not just your hardships that you endure and work through, but to help others with whatever capabilities you have. And this charity has a direct impact on your qadr. So if each test seems greater than the last, and your heart is heavy with grief, rest assured that it is only to give you a greater blessing ahead. Everyone has heard of Khadija radiallahu anha, but she wasn't the only wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to die in his lifetime. There's this other woman who has only a page or two in most history books, if even that. Her name is Zainab bint Khuzaymah radiallahu ta'ala anha, and she was the widow of Abdullah ibn Jahsh radiallahu anhu, who was martyred in Uhud. And she was known for only one thing, her sadaqah. She used to love the poor, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved that about her. And so he marries her alayhi salatu wasalam in Ramadan 4 years after Hijrah. And then just after a few months of being married to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she passes away, being the only other wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to die in his lifetime and the first one to be buried in the Baqi'. I want you to think about this. What if it was her charity that extended her life just long enough to be granted eternity as the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Jannah? Was it her exemplary patience at the death of her first husband, or her exemplary charity that continued after? You see, your legacy is the culmination of all of your life's effort. Every hardship you endured, every obstacle you overcame, every mountain you climbed, and every time you rose to the occasion, you were leaving your mark in this world that will last for generations. It may have been a warm smile or an embrace that you gave to a child as he came to the masjid for the very first time, that became a formative memory and kick-started his love for the masjid. It may be a word of truth that penetrated the heart of a friend going through a really tough time, that he then carried on with him through his life and spread to others. It may be you pulling over your car to help someone in need, which ended up inspiring them to look into Islam and become Muslim. And all these moments are shaping your legacy. But not just that, they may also be shaping your destiny. Just as you have helped ease the life of others, prolonged their lives, and spent your wealth on them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase your lifespan and provision so that your legacy will only be stronger. Just as you were charitable with others, Allah is charitable with you. And so your lifespan and your legacy are stretched to encompass more, so that your reward in the next life is even more. As the Prophet ﷺ said, nothing extends a person's life like good deeds. But how do we reconcile this with the verse, فَإِذَا جَاءَ أَجَلُهُمْ لَا يَسْتَأْخِرُونَ سَاعَةً وَلَا يَسْتَقْدِمُونَ? That if their time comes, their hour will not be moved ahead or behind, not a single moment than that which was decreed for their death. The scholars said there are two types of ajal, two types of lifespans. There's ajalun mutlaq, and there is ajalun muqayyad. There is the ajal, the lifespan that is only known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is unlimited. And then there is the ajal that is limited and known to the angels. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the angel to write down for his servant a certain lifespan with your date of death already there. Remember, you were born with the date of your death and your life's bank account already documented. Then Allah's bounty descends, and He commands the angel to increase him in his lifespan and wealth. So the angel erases that date and puts something new. And then this keeps on happening until Allah informs the angel of death to now go and take the soul of that person. So the angel is not just working off of some register, but off of Allah's rizq, which is unfolding before their eyes as well. Good deeds and du'as can literally work wonders. But we don't see the change here in our decree, just like we don't see the reward yet in the hereafter for our deeds. There were two brothers in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. One who would stay and study with him, while the other had to work to provide for him. And the one that felt like he was missing out opens up to the Prophet ﷺ about feeling like he has to carry the load while his brother gets to enjoy the companionship of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ says to him, لَعَلَّكَ تُرْزَقُ بِهِ. It might be that Allah only provides for you because you provide for him. Your parent asks you to do something and you say, I'm too busy. But the dua of a parent literally opens up not just the gates of Jannah for you, but years of good ahead. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu says that my mother Sulaym brought me to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to serve him and asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to make dua for me. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allahumma akthir malahu wa waladahu wa atil umurahu wa aghfir dhanbahu. O Allah, make his wealth and children abundant, increase his years on earth, and forgive his sins. Now, this wasn't a materialistic dua because the Prophet ﷺ knows what he's making dua for and who he's making dua for. The more life, the more wealth, and the more children that Anas is going to have, the more ways he's going to dedicate that to preserving the prophetic legacy. So Anas radiallahu anhu goes on to live for over 100 years, being the last major companion to die. And he had over 100 grandchildren in his own lifetime. And his wealth was so abundant that they said it was like everything he touched would turn to gold. And he became one of the most generous companions of the Prophet ﷺ. But he also narrated over 2,000 ahadiths from the Prophet ﷺ and spread them throughout the world. And so many details of the daily life of the Prophet ﷺ, from his habits to the foods that he used to eat to his conduct at home, come to us through Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He had a longer life due to a dua, and he had barakah in every single year that he lived. And in 100 years, he accomplished over 1,000 years with barakah. You see, some lives shrink and others grow, and in more ways than one. Of the punishment of sin, أَنَّهَا تَمْحَقُ بَرَكَةَ الْعُمُرِ وَبَرَكَةَ الرِّزْقِ. That as the scholars say, it destroys any blessing you have in your years on earth or in your wealth on earth. Sometimes in life, everything seems great. You used to enjoy certain things, but it's no longer pleasurable for you. The barakah seems gone from your life even though you're still here and seemingly still have plenty. The only thing that keeps life worth living is the remembrance of Allah. مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفَدْ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. What is with you will expire, but what is with Allah will always remain. وَاللَّهُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. Allah is always greater and more everlasting. وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. And working for the hereafter is always better and more enduring. And so just like some lives shrunk, others are increased in so many ways. Adam alayhi salam gave 40 years of his life to Dawood. Imagine how many people Dawood fed, how many more people he gave da'wah to because he lived to be 100 instead of 60. Other people with the barakah of a few years worked wonders on earth. Omar ibn Abdul Aziz was only 38 when he took an earth full of injustice and filled it with justice. And he dies just 2 years later. Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu was in his 30s when he died, but he's the leader of the scholars on the Day of Judgment. Sa'd ibn Mu'adh also was only in his 30s, but the throne of Allah shook at his death. And so you may ask, how come this righteous person who was so generous died at 40? Was their life not increased? It may be that they were actually initially a miscarriage, or maybe they were going to develop a rare disease in childhood, or maybe they were saved from a car accident at 18, and their lives reached what you knew. And even if they would have died at any of those tender ages, it wouldn't have been because they weren't good enough to live. It would have been because Allah knew that death was better for them at that age. And perhaps those touched by their death in their youth would change their lives for the better and continue to find their piece in the puzzle, all while being a sadaqah jariyah and an extension for the deceased. You see, some people die young and they don't live any more years on earth to do good. But they also aren't here to sin anymore while others continue to do good on their behalf. Allah has a plan for all of us. And it could be that you were given an extra day on this earth to be part of a beautiful life for someone else, and hopefully a beautiful afterlife for you all.
رب عمر اتسعت آماده وقلت أمداده ورب عمر قليلة آماده كثيرة أمداده.
Many a life is long in years but meager in fruits, and many a life is short in years but rich in fruit. The fruits of your spiritual labor aren't only found in Jannah. The righteousness you persevered with could birth gifts for you in this life as well. A calamity averted, or time added to do more good, or answered du'as as a result of your patience and prayer and acceptance of His decree. Beautiful memories can be made here with beautiful deeds. But the crowns of the hereafter and celebrations in paradise is what we really need. Your deeds may extend your time here, but that time is decreed for you by time Himself, Allah. And it may be that you've started to realize that you may not have much longer.
قل لن يصيبنا إلا ما كتب الله لنا هو مولانا وعلى الله فليتوكل المؤمنون